Whilst European M&A deal volumes rebounded in the latter stages of 2012, Nordic transactions tailed off. Joining me to discuss how the first quarter of 2013 has fared and the outlook for the year ahead is Kasper Viio, Global Assistant Editor at Mergermarket. Kasper, we know that the Nordic market suffered in the last quarter of 2012, which is perhaps surprising given how resilient that region has been. What do you think some of the drivers for that were?
I think the key issue there was a macroeconomic picture. This time last year we were looking at a pipeline which was robust across the different sort of size classes, across the prism of Nordic countries. It looked very healthy. We wrote about a lot of companies coming to play. However, as the year developed and issues, shall we say, in the southern part of Europe became more tangible and more alarming, it just waned off into the second half of the year, and people were afraid of launching process and so on and so forth. So a couple of large transactions did take place towards the end of the year. Some of the first part of the year was sort of transacted in the second half of the year with some delays, but that effectively meant that there wasn't a very robust pipe coming into the new year, which would have explained the very quiet start to 2013.
I mean, in 2013, generally, we've seen a return to large cap M&A deals globally. How does the Nordic region fit into that sort of global backdrop?
Well, I wouldn't say that Heinz, Virgin Media, potentially Dell and so on equates a lot of robust activity in the Nordic region per se, but I would argue that the Nordic pipe looks actually astonishingly healthy all of a sudden. And as I said, at the first part of the year, it looked very, very quiet for the first month or two. But now it looks pretty good. We have a good handful of interesting primary transactions, which will keep large cap local private equity interested, as well as international private equity players, and I'm referring to Hartwell, DNA, and so on, and Stokke. And then there's an interesting set of private equity disposals coming up as well that our new service has touched upon, not the least the likes of Hilding Anders, Delete Group, Terveystalo, and so on. And then there's a reasonable amount of corporate activity too, not the very least, the jumbo deal of the year potentially, Fortum's disposal of its electricity network, distribution network, but also potentially Scandlines, and those will require a lot of focus from the financing side too, and perhaps with a touch of political risk, so very interesting situations there.
And away from the large cap segment, how are the small caps and mid caps faring? What's your perspective on that?
Interesting you should pick up on that note, because I think one of the main differences to this time last year is that we don't see a particularly robust pipeline of transactions coming up in the small cap segment, which worries me a tad. Having said that, it is interesting to note that quite a few private equity funds have raised new funds, fresh capital to invest, particularly in the small to mid-cap segment, and I would imagine that will gather some positive momentum, new origination transactions coming up in the not-so-distant future, and that should have a positive effect, particularly in the second half of the year.
Okay, Kasper, thank you very much.
Thanks.